All right, gang, let's go ahead and get started. To kind of break up the monotony of listening to me talk to you about history for a while, we have a special guest speaker. This is Eli Lane. He's a former grad student of mine and has gone on to do much more exciting things than what we're doing in forestry here. I'll let him kind of tell the story of what he's specifically into so that those of you who might think about some kind of a career with the federal government or federal agencies with respect to land management. We focus on recreation in this class, but actually here the Department of Defense does quite a bit of land management and forestry and environmental management and all of the above. But there are very specific ways to take advantage of all of the opportunities that are available to you with the federal government. So Eli has agreed to spend some of his time here away from his home in California now to help give you guys and gals a bit of a hint. So we'll give him the floor and yeah, whatever you want to say.
Well, I don't think that anybody wants to hear whatever I want to say, but thank you, Doctor. Yes, so Dr. Park was so nice to give me the proper introduction. I have sat exactly where you all are. I know this room all too well. It'd be really nice if every so often they'd move us between here and then the one next door, but this is where you will live your forestry career. So get it. If you're new to the program, get used to it. You're not going anywhere. But no, it's not bad. There's worse rooms to be in. So I started school, began going to college in 1999-ish, I think, somewhere in then, and then I quit. And I'd take a class. Sometimes I'd drop, sometimes I'd just fail out. And I think by the time I really just started to get my act together, and roughly in 2011, I sat in with the illustrious Dr. Zajac, and it took him a lot more time to add the zeros than it was to add the ones, the twos, and the threes up sort of thing. So I was skating on pretty thin ice whenever I came in, and actually after decided to start paying attention, like actually attending class, which is my number one advice for all forestry students. Just put your butt in the chair and you're going to do very well. I decided I got out with a degree in park and recreation management under Dr. Park, and then I decided to stay on and I got my master's in park and recreation management as well. And technically in, what do we call ourselves? Environmental something.
It's a Master's of Forestry.
It's a Master's of Forestry is what it was in, but I like to call myself a recreational ecologist would be the word that I like to use. They don't let me use those words with government a lot, so that's my education talking. So, and just to take you up to where I'm at now, I work for the United States Army Corps of Engineers, which is a subunit of the Department of Defense. So I tell people, when I want to do something, I don't work for the Army, but when the Army wants me to go do something, I work for the Army. So it's kind of, when they want to give you something, when they want to take something from you, that's when you work for them. But it's an interesting organization. I've been with them for 2.5 years now with the Corps, which is, a lot of people say, well, you've got a degree in forestry, why do you work for the Corps? And we'll get to that later on. So like I said, I came back to school, got my degree, and that was, I think, overall positive. It was positive for me. If you talk to most of my advisors and my beautiful wife, she'd probably say that it wasn't all that much fun while we were going at it, but we are here now. Before that, I ran a bar in Carbondale, and from looking at the faces, none of you should have ever been in there with one or two exceptions because you're not old enough. My family has run PKs down on the corner for years, and so that was kind of what got me in this area, was breaking up bar fights, dealing with drunks, getting puked on, and somehow wasn't enough motivation for me to start attending classes and do well. But that was a good life. It led me for a lot of travel. Kind of been mostly all over the world, climbed 2 of the 7 summits. I've climbed Kilimanjaro and I've climbed Denali up in Alaska. Annapurna is the next on the list. We'll see if I keep burning all my vacation time to come back to Carbondale. It makes those trips a little bit harder, but we're getting there. But fortunately, as Doc said, I now live in California, and I've got a lot of access to some pretty great climbing up around in there. So I've got a trip to Yosemite coming up actually in, I guess, Monday, Tuesday, I'll be down. So yeah, so I get a couple days down there. So it's not where you are, it's where you are, sort of thing. So, so that was kind of my backstory. That's what I did while I was failing out of college, off and on. So it was really positive things, good stuff like that. But I did get to see a little bit of the world, and that kind of helped me round out as a person, which has been very beneficial for me moving forward with my career. After that, while I was still going to school, I was accepted into the Pathways program, which we can talk about a little bit here in a minute, which that's how, if you're a student and you want to work for the federal government, that's the best way to go in. Unless, can we get a show of hands, is anybody here a veteran? 3 vets? Oh, that's good. That's a little lower than what I thought it would be. Or is anybody here, and if you don't feel comfortable raising your hands, you don't have to. If you're 30% disabled, then you should come talk to me, and we could talk about federal service, because you're a #1 recruitment for them. There are a lot of programs set up to specifically meet those needs, and if you are unfortunately 30% disabled, for of course all the hindrances and the challenges that you have to go through, there is a benefit that you can have a pretty great job with the government if you want. So I started as a Pathways student. There are 2 types of Pathways opportunities. If you're a student and you just want to work at a place for any federal agency, you work for them for a summer, they pay you relatively well. I think when I was at Pathways, I was making $13.50 an hour with no locality adjustment. And you get all the time off that a federal employee gets. You get all the sick time that a federal employee gets. You don't get the health care benefits, but you do get those benefits. And you work for your year, and it's a great experience. And you walk out, and you're good. You're done, and you come back to school. There's also the Pathways permanent internship, which I was at the following summer. And that is when you actually go and you work for the federal government in the same way that you're a regular federal employee. You show up every day, you get all the benefits, you get all the health care, you get all that fun stuff, and I can tell you about all that later. And if you're a veteran, here's where your years should perk up. If you did 4 years, you did 6 years, you did 8 years, however long you were in, or if you're 20, you did your 20 and now you're out, all that time counts. So just to give you an idea, I was working with a former Marine when I was a park ranger, and I think every 2 weeks he got 8 or 10 hours of free time off that he could use whenever he want, and then he got 4 hours of sick leave. So you get 12 hours of free time every 2 weeks. So if you've actually done the service, it's always a good idea. If you can, of course, if you've been in, you know what it's like. So if you can take it, it might be worthwhile for you to come back. So with a Pathways permanent student, the deal's pretty good. You go to school, you work when you can, as long as you keep your grades up. When you graduate, they give you a job. It's just that simple. And that's what I did. So as I started, just before we get too far ahead of myself, when I was a temp seasonal with Pathways, I worked in Colorado. I worked on the Rio Grande National Forest. I worked for the Forest Service. I was a biologist, and I was just a biologist in those days. They changed the position after I left. Now it's biologist hydrologist. But so I was a biologist for them, and I had boring stuff like we'd have to go up and dig for boreal toads to see if they were there. So we'd camp out in federal wilderness for 3 or 4 nights and dig up ponds to try to find fish eggs. Didn't find any, unfortunately. We'd lay underneath waterfalls at night to count black swifts because they're an endangered species. Track Canadian lynx. My first day, actually, I got to hold a baby lynx kitten in my hand. They're like that big. They're just like regular kittens. Except they've got a bad attitude, man. And mom sits over about in that back corner growling at you the whole time. But she's not coming over, there's a lot of us. But yeah, so I did fun stuff like that, and as well as inspecting mine audits, checking for compliance of construction, Organized geospatial databases. I did some some canopy cover spot checks for the continuous timber inventory. I was going to make a point how you guys should remember all the adjectives, but and all the adverbs and the TLAs, the three-letter abbreviations, but I can't remember. But anyway, yeah. So I did kind of everything when I worked for the Forest Service. Amazing job, amazing opportunity. Met some really wonderful people. Unfortunately,
This is just the old
yeah,
names. That's all.
That's it. I was like, wait, I thought the T was the other. Yeah. So it used to be called STEP, Student Transition EP. You don't have no anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. And then the SCEP, the STEP, and that was the Student Career Program. And that was, like I said, it was great. It did give me some contacts that I could have possibly pursued for another job with maybe the Forest Service, maybe that unit. However, there wasn't anything there. The Forest Service was still kind of in a funding crisis, which is they're kind of coming out of right now, which is a good thing. So I did that and come back to school, worked on my master's some more. Could have been done a lot faster. And then I got a Pathways Permanent, what used to be known as SCEP, with the Army Corps of Engineers. Now here's where the story gets a little weird. I had to go to Sardis, Mississippi. Anybody know where Sardis, Mississippi is? You crappie fishermen?
Actually, I lived in Louisiana for several years, and one of my brothers lived over there. So
Okay, yeah, it's right where Ole Miss is what it is. So if you ever heard of Ole Miss, that's where it is. So I had to go to Mississippi for a little while, and that was an adjustment period for me. I never thought I'd live in Mississippi, but I lived there. I was a forester and a biologist with the Corps when I first arrived. I did everything from we cruised timber, marked timber, planted food plots for wildlife, installed fish habitat, fish structure, killed a lot of feral hogs. Never thought I'd really have to do that, but I did a lot of that. There's a lot of blood on my hands, but it's okay. They're an invasive species that need to be removed, and that's what I told myself every night when I went to bed. It's okay. But
What about the caterpillars and things that would end up in the lake for structure?
we don't talk about that.
Oh,
Doctor.
sorry.
That
First rule of
yeah. Let's just
disposing
can
of-
we back that up? Turn that off. Yes, occasionally in days gone by, perhaps the Army Corps of Engineers, having a bad reputation, might have been blamed for putting certain former mechanical objects in the water for fish structure. But I can guarantee you that hasn't happened in many.
That's
years.
right.
Many years.
That's right. Vicious rumor. Probably
Vicious rumor.
propaganda.
Anyway, back to me. You. So I was, like I said, every aspect of timber harvest, did a lot of burning. Mississippi really likes fire. They burn everything down there, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. Got pulled in on a massive field fire that had nothing to do with the Corps, but we were bored one day, so we went and helped Department of Forestry and some local guys try to put out like a 400-acre hay fire. That was a ton of fun that day. I think gusts up to 60-mile-an-hour winds, so if any guys have been lucky enough to go out on any prescribed burns, try working a flashy field fire with 60-mile-an-hour winds. Ruffner will say it's impossible. I'll say that it's not because we did it. So I was permanent Pathways. I was enrolled, I think, at that time for 1 graduate hour with Dr. Park to keep myself in. So there's a lot of ways around once you're in. You don't have to be a regular student. You can be part-time student to an extent. You don't have to live there even. They were going to be comfortable with me actually living in Illinois and occasionally coming down to work in Mississippi. That's not the structure that I did. I lived down there. Yeah, I lived down there.
So what GS numbers were each of these attached? You just give people a sense of scale.
Okay,
Like, are they
yeah.
starting at
Yeah.
3 or 14?
When I was a temp seasonal, I was actually hired as a GS Step 5. Or GS 5, Step 1. because I had already completed my math or my undergrad degree. So if you complete your undergrad degree, you're qualified as 5 or below. 5. You can look it all up. The nice thing about when you work for the federal government, everybody knows how much money you make because it's public knowledge. And actually, I could tell you here because when you're working your way through, you just know you got to keep in mind where you're going. And yeah, GS Step 5 is I think $27,000 a year, so that works out to I think it's like $13 an hour or something like that. So it's give or take. Now, when you work for the federal government, not to get too sidetracked here, but there's things like locality adjustments. If you live in a place that's more expensive, they give you more money to try to make up for it. I live in Sacramento right now. I have the second highest cost of living adjustment. They've given me an extra 20% of my base salary. So that's like that's an extra $10,000 a year, basically, is what they pay me to help make up for, for inflated rent and housing costs, food costs, and that sort of thing. So the government actually is fairly decent at that. Could be better, but it is what it is. However, whenever I came down to a Pathways Permanent, whenever I was in Mississippi, I was GS Step 4 because that's what they flew it as, and that's what they were offering me. So I took a pay cut, but I took a pay cut to go permanent. And that's something that we start talking about is that if you want to work for the government, if you want to be successful, flexibility is the one thing that you have to look for. I moved to Sardis, Mississippi, which is not exactly a place that I was really wanting to go. I didn't want to move south.
So how long were you there? Was that a 6 month, 1 year?
I was a Pathways for 6 months roughly until I finished my grad degree, and that's where the magic happens. I got my grad degree, I hand them the paper, they say okay, they process paperwork. 2 weeks later, I'm a full-blown permanent employee. Then that's my job. It's very difficult to fire a federal employee, and you have pretty much guaranteed pay raises, and you have a job for perpetuity. Unless you want to move somewhere else, move up, move around, but you're in the system. And it was instant. And so there is no, we just went through another shutdown the other night. Shutdowns, I still get paid after shutdowns. They always say that they won't. They pay us. There's no going away. Programs might get shut down or moved, then they move you. They give you somewhere else to go. So if you start with the federal government, you will always have a job. You may not always like your job, but you will always have a job. It's kind of like your family. Some of them are a little different, but they're always going to be there. So and then also too, whenever I was GS4 with this program, the day I transitioned, I was actually made a GS7. So I essentially doubled my salary the second that I transitioned out because that position is what it topped out at. So I started as forester biologist with them, burned, planted trees, measured trees, oversaw timber sales, inspected for timber trespass, which anybody here thinking about going resource? Or anybody here had forest measurements? Okay, cool. Little known fact, timber trespass in Mississippi is 10 times the stump value. It's insane. It's crazy. It's real quick. There was a private sale that we had nothing to do with. They cut something like 20 trees, and it wound up being like a $500,000 fine on timber trespass. It was amazing. I'm like, but that's Mississippi. They're a little different. So any which way. So
learn to use your GPS. Really well.
Yeah, especially if you go private, you go consulting forestry work. Make sure you know where your property boundary lines are. Don't just go off the old aerial overlay. Don't trust what somebody else tells you, which is good for most things. So whenever I transitioned from the Pathways program to an actual career position, they made me a park ranger, and that was pretty amazing because I didn't know that there were park rangers in the Army Corps of Engineers, and there's a lot. So for those of you that are looking to go rec, that's pretty much where you're going to be able to get in the door with a forestry degree with the Corps of Engineers, and with a lot of other agencies as well.
If you want to try rec and park rangering stuff from a Department of Defense perspective, Corps of Engineers runs Rend Lake, right? Just up the road.
We run Carlisle Lake is ours. We got a few rangers, I think, up there. Either that or they might share the rangers with Rend. I don't know. That's what we like to call a core desert. It's where you don't have a lot of core in one place. Where I was at in Sardis, there were 4 lakes. Each lake had about 12 regular rangers on it, and then probably 5 supervisory rangers. So we had like 100, 150 staff of just ranger staff within about 45 to 100 or 45 to 50 miles from lake to lake. So if we had staffing needs, we could do that. You want to start talking about fun? Let's see. For ATV patrol, ride around in the lake bed on quads or 4-wheelers to look for people wearing their helmets. Boat patrol, drove a 27-foot Boston Whaler just for fun. Drive around and check people for wearing life vests. I had 2 trucks. I had a Dodge short bed with, I think, 5.3 Hemi in it, and then 4x4 full-size Chevy 2500, I guess. I think it was 2500. And I could just drive everywhere I wanted. Drove in the lake bed to look for a bunch of college students acting like idiots, getting stuck. We would decide if we'd pull them out or not. Oh man, Ole Miss students are the worst. $60,000 trucks, it'd snap an axle on it and be stuck in the lake bed. It was a good time. You could still do a lot of other natural resources work as well, planting food plots, putting in fish structure. You could propose timber sales and mark them if you'd like. I'm trying to think some other resource stuff that we could have done as ranger. Yeah, burning. Yeah, we could burn the dam, which that's a lot of fun. Running with a rear-mounted drip torch, like a 14% incline, lighting the whole dam on fire. That was a fun day. Got into the campgrounds a little bit. A lot of campgrounds, a lot of visitor assistance. Assist with or the state wildlife and parks department people checking for short fish, again checking for life jackets, and literally everything I just said happened in the course of 2 weeks, and that was happening all the time. You know, a lot of patrol, a lot of all of it. You know, so it was a live action job, and pretty much every ranger and the whole Corps does that. Now, the thing with your park ranger with the Corps of Engineers versus some other agencies, you don't carry a gun. You're not law enforcement. You have citation authority. You can write tickets, but you're not gonna arrest anybody, and you're not gonna hold anybody. You're not gonna detain anybody. You're not taking anybody to jail. You can call local law enforcement, and they love it when we call because if they're in problems with us, they're going to be in problems with them too. So that's what also too. If you're kind of on the fence of, well, you know, I like doing visitor assistance. I like interacting with campers. I like interacting with fishermen or hunters or any other kind of recreationalist. I like protecting the resource. I like being outside. Or anything else that I might have listed, but I don't want to be a cop, which I get that. Then DOD might be the way to go because you're never going to be a cop. There's reasons for it. Mostly it's retirement, but they say it's some safety stuff too. But you won't have to do that. So that is something. Now also too, take that with you if you would like to go law enforcement route, and that's what you want. Don't waste the Corps' time being park ranger because you're never going to get a gun and you're never going to get a set of cuffs. They're just not going to do it. While I was a park ranger in the 6 months, I don't know if I told you this, I was elected to the Community of Practice Board, which is the oversight for all rangers. That's why I know that that's where we're never going to do law enforcement. So that kind of comes from on high. So I didn't do my 6-month tour duty in D.C., because although that was lots of fun and other things that I've left out along the way, There are some bad sides to being a ranger. I took another job. Do you guys want to hear about the bad side of being a ranger, or would you rather just being,
Scandal.
can I do the truth?
Yeah.
Dead bodies! You pull out dead bodies. I got 5 one my season. People drowned because they don't wear life jackets. People drown because they don't wear life jackets. They have heart attacks. People drown because they get struck by lightning and don't wear life jackets, and they get struck by lightning. That's the bad one. People like to kill themselves in public areas. They do. You'll see it if you go into natural resources. If you work for the Park Service, huge. Forest Service, a little bit. Corps get it a lot. People like to go out to pretty places before they decide to shuffle off this more coil, if you will. And of course, the other things, drug overdoses. And then if you go out to more scenic places, a lot of motorcycle accidents and car accidents as well. Lots of windy roads, backwoods, people doing things they should not be doing, unsafe motor vehicle uses. So you're going to come up on a lot. You're going to come up on a lot of dead bodies. You're going to deal with that. That's something that you have to put into your brain as calculus, because you can get around it, and you might get lucky, but eventually it's going to happen because that's a part of your job. So that's the big one. The other thing is the hours. You got to consider that. As a ranger, I work 12-hour days, which for those of you under the age of 35, that's not a big deal. That's not being there, it's when you're there. I generally would work 6 days on, have 2 days off, work 2 days, and then I'd have 4 days off on a 14-hour pay period. And if it's a weekend, you're working it. And if it's a holiday, you're working it. I ate my Christmas dinner at the Chinese restaurant can't even remember. Man, the name of that old town Old Miss is in. I only drove through there every single day. Not Sardis, not Batesville. It's the next one over. Anyway, can't remember. My brain's not good. Capital, it's the county seat of Lafayette County, too. And it's Lafayette down there, not Lafayette. I learned that took a long time to learn. Oh yeah, and if any of y'all go down there, they'll definitely call you a northerner your whole life. You don't have to do that. That's just an FYI. Which isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. So yeah, your shift work is going to be the hard part. At least it was for me. Like I said, no Christmases, no New Year's. If you got kids' birthday parties, you're not going to be there because you're going to be at work.
So what about a student who's thinking about, okay, this sounds pretty good, but maybe like a mix of outdoor work and a little bit of office work, so somebody else is scraping up the dead bodies?
Those positions do exist. They take a while to get to. Those are going to be your GS11s. So that's going to be right in your middle. So depending on where you're at, it's easier to get to that level. Different districts are organized differently. Where I was at, that'd be about 15 years to get to there. And you're waiting on somebody to quit, retire, or die. And that's just that. The really good, very coveted positions you'll find in the government are like everything else. Because they're lifelong positions and because everybody wants them, nobody lets loose of them. So so once again, that's where that flexibility comes. If you really want to be a law enforcement officer with Bureau of Reclamation, Reclamation gets guns, or with Bureau of Land Management or Park Service, and that opportunity comes open, but it's in Death Valley. If you really want it, you better go to Death Valley. And if you don't, then you're going to be doing something else. So,
but luckily, California is right next door to Mississippi, so
yeah, it's very conveniently located. I can't tell you how nice it is. It's just right there.
What we're talking about is this idea of to move up, you got to move out. If you're doing federal employment, you can wait 15 years, or you can work 6 months and then go to another place where the 15-year position has already opened up. And what Eli's describing here is how you get a foot in the door, because your first federal job gets you federal standing and makes you competitive with other folks. Pair that with forestry or related degree, and a little bit of volunteer stuff, maybe locally on the Shawnee or up at Carlisle or something like that along the way. And Eli's doing pretty darn well for himself. So what are you doing in California now?
Yeah, so after about 6 months as a GS7 park ranger, which I loved it. Also, too, I forgot to put this one out. Interp, too, it's huge. I was the interp guy, and that was why everybody loved me, because I'd go talk to the students and go to the schools. Every so often on Saturdays, if I didn't feel like doing very much, I'd go to the Bass Pro Shop in Nashville and sit at the Bass Pro Shop and sell boat ramp passes. So there's ways around to have a good day at work, even if if you get a couple dead bodies that week, you can find some other things to occupy your time. As fun as that was, I had an opportunity to go become a federal regulator in California. And regulators, it's a long story of what I do. The short and simple is I regulate out of two laws, the Rivers and Harbors Act of 1867, I think, for navigable waters, so any fill, structure, or impedance to navigation. And I also regulate out of the 1974 Clean Water Act, Section 404. So if you want to put something in water, you got to talk to me. And you need to rent a permit, and if it's very big, you're going to pay lots and lots and lots of American dollars, because we have a zero net loss of waters, zero net loss of wetlands. And in California, it's a very big deal. We're down to 1% of all naturally occurring wetlands in California from original. They came out there, they really moved the water around on the landscape. And it's a big fight. It's a big fight that I fight. I don't have very many qualms about writing many $1 million worth of mitigation to different companies that want to fill those wetlands. And so that probably shouldn't be recorded, but I'm supposed to be fair and balanced, but I'm a little bit more ecologically minded than the construction minded. So if that gets me a write-up, it gets me a write-up. Don't any of you rat me out, we'll be fine. So I had to change what I did. I gave up my uniform, gave up my boots, gave up my trucks, gave up my ATVs, all that, to go out to California. Obviously, for most people, I think, not everyone, you might see why California would be a little bit more of a scenic upgrade than North Mississippi. It was for me, and it was more importantly for my wife, and so that was kind of the driving factor. But the important thing is that whenever I say, how many of you, when you were looking at forestry school, said, I want to be a regulator? Yeah, nobody. You guys, probably most of you never even heard of the position before I got here. But I was highly sought after because I was a forester. Highly sought after because I have a diverse background. And that's what they really look for. I got my first job with the Forest Service because I sat on the board of the Friends of the Shawnee. And I also had dealt with some conflict with Dr. Park's group, with equestrian users and rock climber users, trying to come to terms with that.
On the Shawnee.
On the Shawnee, yes. That conflict resolution, that commitment to volunteering, also too, Dr. Akamani's collaborative community development. That's what got me that first job. My ability to speak to that, my ability to say I can work with a wide variety of people, come to common grounds, and move forward on a project. That should be your answer for like at least 3 of your questions if you ever have a federal interview. They love hearing that stuff. That's how I got that job. I got this job because I was super overqualified, which helps. I was 5 grades over by having a master or having 2 years of master's experience when I got this job. And I got this job because I had gotten that job. And I got my current job because I had that job. And that's the way it works. Is once you're in, you can move and you can go, and that's how you move up. If making more money is what you want. Also, too, you can move down. I can work my position now, which I am in the middle of my ladder. I get about, it's a good raise. You can look at it online, the chart's there. I'm a 9 now, I'll be an 11 in a year, and then I'll be a 12 after that. And so if you want to look it up, you'll see what it is. It's pretty substantial raises. And on top of that, once you hit your target grade, you get an additional raise every year. The older you get, or the higher you go, the bigger the raise is. It's the name of the game.
So
But-
that's what GS stands for. So grade and step. It goes up to grade 15, and inside of each grade there are a bunch of steps called a ladder. And no, sorry, ladders.
No, you're all wrong.
Sorry.
Sorry.
This is why we bring in the expert.
GS is general series. That's the general grade. If you want to be a dump truck driver for the Corps or the Forest Service, you're going to be a WG, a wage grade. Now, if you're a law enforcement officer, you're going to be a GL, general law enforcement. So the GS, but your 7 is your base number, and then outside of that you have steps. Now your ladder is, I was hired as a 5'7", 9'11". So
Meaning I'll top out at 11.
top out an 11. And every year I move that grade. Now once I get to an 11, if I want to go any higher, I have to move. But in my department, they go, "You ready to be a 12?" They go, "Yes." Okay, move you over. Oh man, what did we use? We used to do things to people that didn't turn their ringers off in class.
That's a bad look. No.
Yeah,
Just silence your phone.
no, it's all right. That happened in a pretty high up meeting actually the other day. So if you, it still happens even in that sort of stuff. So yeah, so I quit my dream job of being a park ranger for more money and a better place to live for me. Knowing that if I get in this position, it helps with my retirement, which is the main reason why I went into federal service. I'm old. I'm old when I started working, and I needed to have something at the end of the tunnel. So it was to benefit me for those points. However, in 6 years, if I'm tired of working in an office and only getting out once or twice a week, if I get enough death threats from developers, which has been known to happen, then I can move back down. I can go be a park ranger somewhere else. I could go work for the Bureau of Reclamation, go work for the Forest Service, I go work for anybody. And that's the other thing, is you start with Corps, work for us for a year, you don't like the Corps anymore, you're automatically available to go work for any other agency. Because if you go onto USA Jobs, which usajobs.gov is the way that you get a federal job, it helps if you like work and volunteer with your local people, if you know people in an agency. But the only way that you can actually apply for a job, the only way you'll ever get a job with the federal government is you have to go to usajobs.gov. There are 2 types of jobs that you can get. There are the jobs that are open for the general public and federal employees only. Look at it sometime. Do a search. Look for park ranger. Look at, like, I checked it the other day. I think that there were about 37 or 39 permanent park ranger positions that were open that were for career federal employees. There were 4 for regular Joes and Jane. So it's what really it's the leg up. It's not even a leg up. It's like 3 step ladders up. It's how you get in. So once you're in, you have the ability to move, and that's really the biggest thing. Is the flexibility and willing to take that sort of stuff. The only other thing is that my diversity in education has been the reason why I have nailed every single interview. I turned down 5 different jobs to go to California. 3 of them were park rangers. One of them was actually a dump truck driver that I got that experience from this position here. I did a lot of I played on a dump truck a lot and a bulldozer a lot. There was that too. Yeah, a lot of heavy equipment and a lot of chainsaw use too.
To put some context on what Eli is saying in terms of turning down 5 jobs to go to a 6th in California, which is a pretty good position. The sort of naive application rate, meaning you just sort of throw in your application, even just to hear back from the hiring authority on a particular listing, is somewhere like 0 to 2%. So to have 6 yeses, like all the way through that process on USA Jobs, that's a big deal. So this is good advice that you guys are getting. If you decide to go federal, or a lot of states have a sort of slightly smaller version of the same kind of workflow. But pathways to get a foot in the door while you are a current or recently graduated student. While you're a current student is best of all. We had recent alone, Rachel started right after finishing her undergrad in a GS 13 position, making about $100,000 a year, out in the Southwest with the U.S. Forest Service. That's crazy. I had to go to 9 years of college to get a job as a professor, and she kind of short-circuited all of that. So, the little ins and perspectives that Eli's giving you guys, these are the real deal. This is how this stuff works. Any tips or advice or guards against the soul-sucking nature of USA Jobs?
Oh, it's terrible. You just have to embrace it. You don't get
Embrace the
frustrated.
suck.
It's a whole new way of life. And also too, if you start to work for the government, there's always whole new ways of life. We're going through a new rating system change. It's 22 hours worth of training to learn how to tell how good you are at your job. Federal government. Yeah, you can always take that route too if you just don't want to do it long. Just to give you an idea, this position I applied for, and if you click all the little arrows to be all, I will go work in Wyoming, I will go work in Colorado. 500 applications for this one. This one was ever I was really motivated. I think I applied for 600 or 700 applications to get to this position. And then as I moved out to California, once I was in the federal system, I only applied to about 7.
And you got 6 offers.
6 offers. I learned, most importantly, what I was actually qualified for. Like I said, my diverse background is the other reason why I got it. Also, too, I'm not afraid to talk to people, and that really goes a long way. If you're willing to sit down and talk with your interviewers and ask them good questions and communicate with them on a personal level, that's really what it is. I see a lot of that still in the federal government, even with new hires, people that just can't sit down and talk to people, that can't just get up and tell them about who you are. So become an expert in who you are. That's what you have to do. My USA Jobs resume is up to 14 pages long. Single space. Type 11 font. That's what you're doing. And it's stuff like, I didn't design and build trails for Dr. Park. I implemented GIS tool sets and analysis software. I utilized hand tools. I maintained hand tools. I stored hand tools. I utilized power tools. I repaired power tools. I stored power tools. That's the way it goes. I didn't just go look for Canadian links. Dr. Park is an amazing resource for that. He's what got me going on getting my federal resume built up. There's a lot of
really about me, guys.
There are lots of books about how to write your federal resume. It's just the way it is. It's a different mindset. It's not like the public sector. It's a whole different thing. USA Jobs, I'm going to go over some stuff with Dr. Park later. There's even some new tricks and tips. They hide stuff. They don't tell you things. You want to go be a biologist? It might not just be it might not be flown as a biologist position. It might be an interdisciplinary job. Because they might want to hire biologists, they might want to hire a civil engineer, they might want to hire a geologist, but they'll hire any 3 of them. So you could go do that. So yeah, like I said, it's a whole other world as far as applying for these jobs, but they really are worthwhile when you get them. Like I said, every job that I've had with the government has been incredibly rewarding. Because at the end of the day, the only people you work for are the American citizens. And that sounds like some stuff that they make me choke down and I got to spit out whenever I go talk to people. But it's the truth. At my job, currently, I protect natural resources in perpetuity for people. That no one will ever build on it, no one's ever going to fill it, no one's ever going to change it in any way. That's a pretty rewarding thing. And at the end of the day, I have bosses that make sure I show up to work and make sure that I don't lie about my time and that sort of stuff. But ultimately, my only bosses are the United States. We're supposed to say taxpayers, but it's the United States. It's anybody who's living in this country, and then also worldwide. Wetlands are big carbon sinks. It's a big thing. Very good.
So we got about 5 minutes left. Does anybody have any questions for our expert in not starving to death upon switching to JOB search mode?
If you're already a federal employee, like such as working in the post office, could you go on USA Jobs and apply for the federal employee?
Oh yeah, you get you're a postal service employee. You are like a super high level. They have special appointments for you, even if you want to transfer out. Yeah, no, you're in a really good place. You're great.
I want to go into wildlife management and conservation as game warden. Would I still be able to work for the Army Corps of Engineers with that type
We have biologists. You wouldn't be game warden. You would do things like what I did. You'd build habitat, plant food plots. You would manipulate different mitigation areas, anything like that. So you're going to be more based on providing the habitat, providing for that. Like the actual enforcement, that's going to go to a state agency. I will say this, and this is something that they don't tell you a lot here, but this is a true fact. I know a lot of people say you're going to be a game warden. No, you're not. How many game wardens are in Illinois right now? There's like 20. And they're not going anywhere because they're like my age. You can get a job. I'm not saying that it's hopeless. I'm just saying that there's a lot of other jobs that you get to do everything that they do. So don't become hyper-focused. Definitely don't be hyper-focused when you're a junior or you're a sophomore. Look around. Be open. And just because a job says, well, it says I gotta write people tickets for life jackets. I'm like, yeah, you gotta write people for tickets for life jackets. 1 day a week. And the rest of the time, you're driving a tractor, planting food plots, killing armadillos with night vision scopes on the dam. That one happened one time. That was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had 4 federal agencies working on that. But yeah. I'm sorry. If I've offended you, I apologize. But shooting armadillos with night scopes it was a dream of mine for years. I just didn't know I had it. But like I said, as far as don't become hyper focused. I want to be a park ranger for the National Park Service. If that's really a goal, you better get an internship. You also better be a vet. You also better have already paid out of pocket your law enforcement training so that way you can carry a gun, which is several $1,000s, if that's your only goal. Or another way is to work for some federal agency, maybe the Park Service, and along the way, sneak those trainings in on your development program, and in 3 years you're qualified, and you put in a note, and then you go be a protection officer, if that's what you want.
And they paid you to do this while you're working instead of you paying out of pocket to go to law enforcement academy.
So that's the thing, is getting in, working with them, and gaining the experience. But the biggest thing is, if you're in wildlife under Dr. Nielsen's cruel and brutal tutelage, make sure you study force measurements, make sure you take fire. If you're a rec student, loving Dr. Parks, good vibes and all that, that's great. Still study your measurements. Take a wildlife class. And the biggest one is listen to what Dr. Willard and Dr. Schoonover say. Hydrology and knowledge of basic hydrology, it will carry you far no matter what. If you work for the federal government, you work for a state agency, you work for a nonprofit NGO, if you know the way water works, you're going to do well. And if you can speak to that even at a basic level, you're going to be head and shoulders above most people. So a well-rounded, don't just say, hey, I don't need forest soils because I'm going to go be a park ranger and we don't. Yeah, actually you use it every day. It's like your mom with trigonometry when your mom said it, you're going to use algebra all day, every day. And you do, you just don't realize that you do it. So that's the biggest thing is don't write off any of the classes here. These guys are pretty smart.
We got time for one more question. I got the expert in the room.
I have a lot of questions. Do they pay your relocation costs?
Yes, they do. They pay your relocation costs. They pay you to move. If you're married, they pay your spouse to move with you. You stay in a hotel for up to 60 days. They pay you to do all that. Yeah. Sometimes.
Sounds pretty good.
I'm a single parent, so do they offer help with child?
Core will pay for your daycare.
Oh.
You're gonna have to come to a district office probably, but Core will pay for your daycare, and that's a little known
Put that
secret.
in context for those of you who are planning to reproduce but have not yet. Daycare by itself can be $10,000 to $15,000 a year after taxes, out of your income, depending on where you live.
Just to give you another real quick fringe benefit that they don't always tell you. A friend of mine lives an hour and a half away. He lives up in the mountains. He lives in the Sierra Nevada mountains, like on 10 acres in the forest. It's amazing. It's like beautiful. He drives 5 minutes to a bus stop, takes the bus in. The Corps pays $700 a month for his bus pass to come to work. He gets it for free. They do that. They want you to use public transportation, so they'll go out of their way. But yeah, so there's a lot of other stuff too. Also too, you get to do stuff like me, go fight fires, pay 12 hours overtime a day. It's a lot of fun. I mean, there's some bad stuff that comes with it too. Dead bodies.
We gotta go. Thank you,
Yeah,
Eli.
yeah, thank you guys. Like that.
Thank you.